should you talk to someone who's grieving? What are the right and wrong things to say to someone who's just gone through trauma? Does our worldview help us respond better to sad people, or does it make us more annoying? We're going to be talking about all of that and more on today's episode of Theology on Air. Well, welcome back to Theology on Air. Theology on Air is an offshoot of Theology on Tap, which is a ministry to young adults in Houston, where we sit around and we drink craft beer and we talk about interesting things around theology, philosophy, faith, and culture. And so Theology on Air is our chance to dive even more deeply into those things. So thanks for watching. And if you're listening on a podcast, please rate us, review us, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, same thing. Basically, we want you to worship and adore Theology on Air so that we can grow and other people can hear this. I am Sarah Stone. I'm the Outreach Director for Young Adults at MDPC in Houston. And I'm joined today by a very special guest, one of my favorite guests, my sister, Laura Icardi. We're going to do something a little bit different today, but Laura is the Deacon of Women's Discipleship and Training at Redeemer Church of Arlington in the DC area. She's the homeschool mom of 3 kiddos, my adorable niece and nephews. And she brews her own kombucha, so she really does it all. And we're going to be using kind of our own experience of having gone through something traumatic to talk to you guys about how you will talk to people that have gone through those kind of things. But first, Laura, just tell us a little bit about you and kind of the experience that brought us to be doing this today.
Yeah, thanks. So she mentioned I'm a homeschool mom of 3. I feel inclined to say that I was homeschooling in the before times, before it was cool.
Before the pandemic.
Before the pandemic. Yeah. And we've been living in the DC area for about 12 years now, and it's kind of a crazy place to live, but and really hard to be away from my family. But it's nice to have Sarah here in my backyard to talk about this kind of stuff together.
Shh, we're in a studio. No one will know.
Right. That's what I meant to say.
We just made it look like we're on a random patio.
It's a green screen.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were talking recently about our experience. So I'm actually a twin. My brother was born 12 minutes before I was, which is apparently a very long time for twins. And he was diagnosed with leukemia about 4 years ago?
Yeah.
Now?
Almost. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when he was diagnosed, they said it was the good kind. It's a kind where you just take some drugs and you take them the rest of your life and you should be fine. So we were, of course, devastated by the diagnosis, but then encouraged by that news. And then our family kind of embarked on this whole journey of just
learning about cancer, enduring cancer, watching the medicine not work.
Yes. Yeah. So medicine after medicine didn't work. And then it ended up with a transplant that we were very hopeful it was working for a little bit, and then it didn't. And he died September 5th last year. Mm-hmm. And of course, our family has been reeling ever since. So Sarah and I have talked in recent months. Now that the grief isn't quite so thick, it's not quite so...
We're not going to cry the whole way through the podcast is what we're saying. But yeah, we've kind of experienced when you walk away from... so Laura is the twin and they were close. I'm another sister and I love my brother very much. I was also the stem cell donor. Yeah. And so that carries some extra with it. Mm-hmm. But we've experienced the gamut of people responding to us in our grief, good and bad. So we decided when enough time had passed that we would kind of inform the world of what works and what doesn't work. And I actually was having dinner with someone recently who did one of the do's that we're going to talk about today. She actually responded the right way, in my mind. And she said that it was partly because she listened to a podcast where someone explained how to talk to grieving people. Before, she thought that she shouldn't bring it up because it'll be painful. Right. But someone explained, no, bring it up. People want to talk about it. And so she did. And so I thought, and she is one of many people that were like, you should do a podcast on this. So here we are. I think probably the number one thing that I hear when this conversation is happening is people say, well, I just don't know what to say. I don't know the right thing to say. I don't know what the right or the wrong thing is to say. And so maybe the first do that we talk about is just that. You can say that. You can say, I don't know what to say. I'm stumped about what to say. I want to love you. I want to help you. I want to care for you. But I don't know what to say. There are no words. That's a really good start. In fact, it can be all you say because it's true. And we've all been there. I mean, we've been on the other end of this. So that's a do. Do you want to offer us a do or a don't to follow that? We're just going to pop around.
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, one of my do's actually is a do. Take action. So one of the things that was helpful for me was for people to actually do things for me, offer to watch my children, bring us meals. They sent flowers, even though our family, there was something in the obituary that said the family had requested in lieu of flowers, donations can be made to whatever. And, just keeping in mind that usually it's the spouse that makes that decision or the next of kin, and other members of the family may really appreciate the flowers. So if you know your friend well, that was something that was meaningful to me.
Like do a thing, a material thing.
Do
like
something
action.
tangible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a big one for me. And don't just offer to, like, well, can I do something? Let me know if I can do anything.
Oh, that's a big one. That's not just people in grief. That's someone after a breakup or whatever. And you say like, well, just let me know if there's anything I can do for you, which sounds nice. But sometimes I think people are like, well, I said the thing, so I'm covered. And you're like, but it would be even better if you were like, if it's okay with you, be at your house this weekend to do your laundry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't want to administrate in my grief.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So
okay, I want to move on to the don'ts because I am feeling feisty. A couple of don'ts that I have noticed in this process. One, please don't say hang in there. I am not a cat in a poster. Hang in there. My brother died. I'm not going to hang in there. I'm going to be destroyed. And the hang in there is really condescending. So just don't do that. That's a good don't. Here's one. This is probably my biggest pet peeve of the don'ts. I don't know. There's several. When people say, I know what you're going through. I get that people like to empathize. And I have found myself doing this. So I'll just say, I'm guilty of this. I know exactly what you're feeling. Someone goes through a breakup. I'm like, I've been through a breakup, but people are different. But especially when someone has died, saying, I know what you're going through. It's like, well, but you don't know exactly what I'm going through because your brother didn't have leukemia, have a transplant, didn't work, died the same way ours did. And even if you get what I'm saying. But there's corollaries to that. It's not just don't say, I know what you're going through. Don't then compare it to my grandpa died last February. You're like, was your grandpa old? Old people are supposed to die. It's sad. Anytime someone dies, it's sad. But when you're like, my grandpa was 97. I'm sorry your grandpa died. My brother was 37. That's different. And so it cheapens it. And then my fave of this whole grouping is when people will talk about pets. Like, well, my cat died last year. Okay, that's the same as my brother, who was a member of our family and a human being. Right. Anyway, you can tell this one really gets me.
Yeah, and I'm a dog person, and I love my dog, and we joke that I love my dog more than my family. I don't.
Hurtful.
For the record. Love him more than my family. But I get it. When he dies, it's going to be devastating to me. And yet, it is still not the same as a human, a brother, somebody your age or around your age. With his whole life ahead of him, it's not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to pick another
another do or don't? Well, how do I choose between a do? Oh, I've got a good do.
Okay.
Cry with me. I think a lot of times people think that they sort of have to stay strong for us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And but the fact is, when I had friends who were moved to tears and cried with me, wept with me, really, I just felt so joined in my grief. I felt a lot less alone. Grief can be a really isolating experience. And having them cry with me not only made me feel less alone, but it made me feel like my brother was being honored.
Yeah.
It made me feel like they actually really care about what happened. Not just about me, but about just what happened. It's not right.
Yeah.
That this happened.
It's like acknowledging the injustice.
Right.
And as Christians, we have a biblical mandate may be strong, but the Bible talks about rejoicing with those who rejoice and weeping with those who weep. There is something special about that. God knew that. That's why he told us to do it. I found that same thing to be true. And sometimes people are crying with you because you're crying and it triggers them to feel bad for you, which that's fine. Like, they don't have to be so sad about Robert that maybe they've never even met, or whoever your person is. But yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I'm going to be feisty again and go to a don't. Let's see. Don't this, y'all. It's theology on air, so we have to talk about theology.
Oh, yes.
Don't use bad theology to try to make me
Yes.
feel better.
All the amens.
Okay. Here are some examples. I'm sorry. Everything happens for a reason. Christians and non-Christians say this. Everything happens for a reason. We can do a whole other podcast sometime about whether that's a true statement and whether it's biblical. I think you could make a case for it. I think people often say it. They don't mean the biblical case for it. Either way, okay, everything happens for a reason. Maybe it was a really good reason. Still sucks that it happened. But this is one that this last time, I didn't think that real humans said this thing. Really? I thought that this was something that Christians complained about, but no one would actually ever say this. But multiple people said this to our parents. Thank goodness no one said this to me, because I would have given them a theology lesson that they weren't ready for. God needed another angel.
I can't.
This is a very bad recruitment policy for getting angels. First of all, it's not how it works. Just if you're listening and you're not a believer, this is not how we think that angels are made. God made all the angels. It's a set number. It's done.
Also, God doesn't need anything, for the record.
Yeah. Yeah, he's self-sustaining.
Sort of what makes him God.
So, I mean, you can see this is bad on multiple levels. Like, even if that's how God got angels, which it's not, you have still lost that person. That doesn't make me feel better that he's an angel. I want him to be my brother here with me, making bad jokes and sparring about politics, which is what I miss. So, yeah, bad. If you're not sure about something theologically, just don't say it. Or maybe check with your local theologian.
Your local theologian. My favorite,
Yeah.
air quotes, on this one is quoting Romans 8:28, which gets to that everything happens for a reason. But it's, God works for the good of those who love him, and for those who are called according to his purpose and all that. And I once was part of a small group in my church where we all agreed that we were going to get T-shirts made that said, if you quote Romans 8:28 to me, I will cut you. And I still really want to get that T-shirt made. So it's still on my bucket list, I think.
Yeah. And just to, again, since we're a theology podcast, Romans 8:28 is the end of a section talking about how, and we'll talk about this a little more at the end, but God is going to make everything right again. And so this idea that God works all things together for good means in this cosmic, eventual way, ultimate way, all things will be good. And again, we'll get into this a little bit more later, but it doesn't mean they're good right now. And it doesn't mean that death is good. In fact, death is always bad. It's like the first bad thing that happened in the beginning of everything. It was like, you made a bad choice. Now people die. If you don't know what I'm talking about, reach out to us and I'll tell you a story from Genesis. But that idea is like really all of the platitudes. So people, especially religious people, so it's not just Christians. I think any religion will try to apply some sort of quasi-religious platitude, like the everything happens for a reason is one, and this is one. Well, just remember God's promises. Like, I mean, I've studied the Bible and God does make really amazing promises, but they don't really have to do with, like, my brother's not going to come back to life.
Yeah.
Many people are going to die of cancer, even when you pray for them to be healed. So those kinds of things don't do that. It's too much.
It's too much.
Yeah. I'm not saying don't use the Bible, but maybe go back to that verse about weep with those who weep and just stay in that lane.
Yeah. Use some Psalms, maybe.
Psalms are good. Yeah. Like, I weep until my couch is wet. Yes.
Yeah.
Been there.
Even my bones are
Aching. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to go
Those
next?
are safe. Yeah. Well, either way, I've got plenty.
Go.
Okay. One of the ones, this is a do.
She's nicer than me. Hers are do's and mine's are don'ts.
I have don'ts, but I have a lot more do's.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I think we both felt like we had a really good support system after Robert's death. And so a lot of my do's are just inspired by what my friends did. And I just want to celebrate that and have other people learn from that. I know I have. So, one of them is just giving me permission. And for me, I really appreciate the permission being explicitly given, but just permission to be kind of a mess for as long as I need. And that doesn't, this kind of goes with it. That doesn't mean, don't tell me, just rest. Just give yourself grace. Don't do laundry today. Just order in. Like, don't tell me to be a mess.
Instruct me on how to grieve.
Give me permission to be a mess, but let me be functional if I want to be functional that day. And then let me be a mess next week if I need to be a mess. And let me fall apart on a random Tuesday. So
I want to pause you for a second. Because something you said, and then I want to continue this because there's more to that one. But the give yourself grace thing is really broader than just talking to people that are in grief. If someone is telling you to give yourself grace, first of all, that's a little theologically wonky because we can't give ourselves grace. But the idea there is that you're telling someone to do a thing that only God can do. And so you're actually kind of putting an extra burden on them. Like, if you want to help that person, you can show that person grace. So if you think that they're being too hard on themselves and they're trying to work too much, you can offer to take something off their plate. Mm-hmm. So telling them to offer themselves grace is really like adding an extra thing to the plate that you're trying to lighten the load. I know I'm mixing my metaphors.
It's pressure. It feels like pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, theologically incorrect.
Right. Which is more important.
Well, when you have two theology nerds talking about this, it's going to go there. But keep going on that one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's about all I have for just assure me that I don't have to be normal. Assure me that when I'm not being normal, you're not like tired of that. You're not weary of me crying. You're not weary of me telling stories about my brother or about those last days or any of that stuff. Just even if you are tired and weary of it, fake it. Because a lot of that is just really important to the griever to have that space to do that. So
when I was telling my boyfriend about Robert and kind of painting the whole picture of what happened, I mean, he listened and he said some very kind things. And then he said, if you need to say this again, you can. Or whenever you need to say this again. And I love that because it kind of opened the door for if I'm like, I know you already know the story. You don't need to hear the story again. You know my brother died. Yeah. I just need to open that up again and vent. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that also dovetails into another one of my do's, which is just to help me memorialize in any way that would be meaningful to me, or that how to do. And everyone's different, right? Not everyone wants to memorialize. So this one's very like, you've got to know your friend. But I have a friend who just took it upon herself to learn this special song that we associate with our brother. I didn't even realize that she was kind of relearning to play piano. And there's this one song that he just really loved. We played it the day he died in his hospital room after he had passed. It was played at his funeral. And she just took it upon herself to learn that song. And then like a couple weeks ago, I was over at her house and she offered to play it for me. And it was...
I don't want that. Well, that sounds terrible. We should probably interject in this moment to say that some of these do's and don'ts are just us being particular. Right. Some are universal.
Right.
No, I'm joking about that. If she offered to do that for me, I would have loved it and cried. But continue.
Exactly. That's the thing. You have to know your friend and you have to know what would be meaningful to them. And she offered and said, there's no pressure. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. And I did want to do it. And of course I wept and it was very dear. But more than her playing it for me, just knowing that she had spent like hours of her own personal time on that.
Yeah.
It meant so much to me because for me, that was her entering into my grief with me, using her time and her energy that she could have used for so many other things that are probably more enjoyable to her. Just entering into that with me was really meaningful. And it doesn't have to be playing a piano. It doesn't have to be doing, another friend made a piece of art for us.
I think as you're talking, I'm thinking too about the fact that there's obviously different levels of friendship or acquaintanceship. Is that a word? Acquaintance?
It is now.
Osity? Yeah.
Right.
So obviously like people that you work with, maybe you're not going to be as close with, you're not going to like play the piano for them or whatever. So some of these obviously is for a particular kind of relationship, but probably my biggest one that I wanted to say today applies to everybody. So it's not just friends that want to do something really intentional and sweet, but also just for like, I hardly know this person, but I know that they went through something difficult. And that is to just engage me. This is a do and a don't. The do is engage me. I'll say a little more about that in a second. The don't is, and this is probably my biggest pet peeve. I said that earlier, but this really is.
I can't
don't just say nothing.
Yes.
Because then there's an elephant in the room we all know the elephant is there. Like if someone doesn't know, obviously that's one thing. In fact, that's happened a few times where someone's like, hey, how's your brother? I'm like, he died. That's awkward for everyone. And I try to help people. But if you know it happened and you say nothing, it's so awkward. It's so weird.
It's weird.
It puts the onus on me to have to both tell you and help you emote. And that I have noticed that the people that have touched me the most in my grief are the ones that will actually ask specific questions. Like, and it could be anything, but it's not just like, how are you? That's a very good question. But what was it like in those final days?
Yeah.
What do you miss most? I mean, you make it your own, but just engage me at all. Even if it's just, I will say this, all of the stuff we made fun of earlier, like platitudes and sort of saying the wrong thing, I would say are still better than saying nothing.
Yeah. Completely agree.
Like you might get a theology lesson from me that you didn't want. Like, well, actually, Romans isn't about that, bro. But I would rather you say something than nothing because nothing is just so uncaring.
Yeah. And I would say like there are questions that you might think are too intimate to ask. Like, you say, you tell me about those last days. And we can always respond and say, I'm not comfortable sharing that, or I don't really want to talk about that right now. But I would much rather you give me the opportunity, because if I want to talk about that, it's going to be very awkward for me to bring it up and say,
yeah. So I'd like to tell you about some really weird, like the last days of his life were
have you ever been
horrifying.
to a deathbed?
Yeah.
Let me tell you about it.
Yeah.
But having someone actually ask about it and give me the opportunity, if I want to talk about it, to be able to do that without having to be awkward and weird about it is really...
Yeah.
It's kind of a gift, I think.
I think a lot of these have to do with just opening up space, making space for conversation to happen, making space for us to grieve. And yeah, I think you're right. Err on the side of asking too much. And the griever will tell you if you're out of your lane and be like, I can't. That's too much.
Yeah, that brings me, there was one thing I mentioned to Sarah when we were talking about this yesterday that, it's like just one brief little thing to the griever. And that is sometimes you are going to have to sort of teach the people around you, like live, how to care for you in grief. And that sucks.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to
give
instruct.
an example of what you mean. Like,
there would be times where in our home, something would happen. Maybe we were on a Zoom call with our small group from church, let's say, and somebody said something that triggered me. I hate that term.
Well, but in our sister relationship, we use the word trigger ironically. So then when we use it for real, we're like, no, but for real,
but like
trigger.
Actually trigger. So there was one day where someone in our small group was sharing something about something she was going through that was just it was hitting very close to home. And it was on Zoom. So I had the freedom. I got up and I walked out of the room and I went into the front of my house and I was just weeping. And one of my kids had come over and was like trying to rub my back and be like, Mommy, what's wrong? What's going on? And in that moment, all I wanted to do was just weep alone. I actually didn't want comfort. I didn't want someone to rub my back. I did.
I'm joking. You want different things at different times.
We have those relationships.
But she is weird.
That's true. But I didn't want anyone to rub my back. I didn't want to have to explain what set this off this time?
Yeah.
And so I had to say in that moment, like, baby, sometimes I just need to cry. And I don't want to explain it and I don't want to talk about it and I just need to cry and that's it. But I had to sort of like stop crying for a minute to instruct and then go back to crying, which is very inconvenient.
Really harshes the mellow of a good cry.
That's a mild example, but
I mean, we've been mostly talking to people responding to those in grief, but some of what we are going to be talking about is to those that are grieving. And this is just one of those things you're going to have to, because everybody's different and every story is different. And even we're different. Like, please come rub my back and ask me why I'm crying.
I'm like, don't touch me.
Send all back scratching and inquiry my way.
Yeah. No, I want all that when I'm done crying.
Yeah.
I have a very specific protocol.
But this gets back to that idea of creating space, right? If you enter into someone's space and you give them the sort of talking stick, as it were, to tell you what they need, you can't go wrong because they'll tell you if they do or don't need you. And
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to do a don't. And this one is specific to cancer. And by the way, I found myself doing this, so I'm a little bit of a hypocrite saying it because it's just such a vernacular. Please don't talk about fighting cancer or someone's battle with cancer. He lost his battle with cancer. because it's true, but it also implies that some soldiers are strong and some are weak. And if that person died, it's because they didn't fight hard enough. Because that's what it would be if it was an actual battle, right? If people came back from battle and one person didn't come back, it'd be like, well, I guess he wasn't like as well trained, or he got in the way of the missile, or I don't know how missiles work. That seems wrong, but you get what I'm saying. I let people off the hook for this because I've heard myself saying it. But I think the reason why, and maybe we can dig into some of these motivations behind these things. The reason why people do that is because it's a gentler way to say something like, oh, he lost his battle with cancer, than to say he died.
Yes.
Because to say that someone died means to admit to the person you're talking to who's grieving and yourself that 37-year-olds die sometimes. In fact, sometimes children die. And death is unfair, and it's ugly, and it's messy. And to admit it feels gross. And so you can make it sort of pretty so you don't have to experience that.
Yeah.
I don't know if
we want a euphemism for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I also wonder if part of the reason that you and I don't like that is because we've also heard sort of the spiritual version of that, which is like, you know, if you had just a little bit more faith, or if you had prayed just a little harder. I didn't hear that this time. I've heard it throughout the process when he was still alive. It was like, we just have to have enough faith. We just need to pray him through this. And that really, really bugged me, because it does imply that if he dies, and he did, that someone did not pray hard enough.
Yeah. We lost our battle, apparently.
Yeah.
With the cosmos or
we
something.
Didn't pass a test, like a faith test or like a religion test.
I don't even know if you know this, but I went and got a massage at some point when he was post-diagnosis. We knew that he was going to pass. And I was telling the massage therapist like why I was so tight. I'm like, my brother has cancer and he's really sick and we're just all really worried. And he went into a whole thing about how it was sort of this quasi-Buddhist Eastern something about how, well, you really have to figure out if it's like your sin or his sin, or maybe like your parents or something that did this. Yeah, this fool. I was like, if you're going to get into a theology argument, you have picked the right girl, but the wrong time. Like, I just need you to work out those knots. But it was terrible. And I thought, I'm thankful that I have actually sort of done the math on this, that's terrible theology, and we can talk some more about that. But to say that to someone who hasn't really thought through that, now they have this extra burden that like they're sad because something terrible is happening, and they're also responsible.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, wow, if humans are responsible for keeping other humans alive when they have cancer, that's a whole new world.
Yeah.
But just to be clear, what we're talking about is sometimes called the prosperity gospel. Sometimes it's called word of faith or word faith Christianity or theology. And it's this idea that if you pray and you have faith, God wants good things for you. God wants to heal. God wants, everything to be better, which God does do those things. And he does eventually want everything to be better. But it doesn't work that if we have enough faith. God does what God is going to do. Sometimes we don't understand why.
Right.
But the amount of faith doesn't have anything to do with it, which is actually really good news. Because it means we also can't screw things up by not having enough faith.
Exactly. Yeah, the ball's not in my court, which is it's a relief.
Yeah. Let's see. Do you want to do another one? Pick one.
Yeah, there was another one I had, I think. I mean, this is just a really simple one. Anyone can do this. I just really appreciated texts that gave me permission to not have to write back, and that they just kind of kept coming. Like, and it can be something simple like, I just heard, no words. You don't have to text back. Just know I'm here. I'm praying. And I got a lot of those, and I ignored a lot of them. But every single time one of those came in, it was like someone had taken just a teeny tiny little like pebble-sized weight of the grief for me. It was imperceptible at first, but I think the more I felt like people were carrying me through their prayers and just offering to be there for me, and telling me that they are there and they're thinking about me. I felt less alone, and it was really, really helpful. So texting me, and not just texting me like for a couple days or like the day of the funeral.
Say, after the casserole period has ended.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I've had people remember like the 1 month, the 2 month anniversary. I had another friend text just like randomly, like, I mean, it wasn't any kind of anniversary, but it was like a few months later, you know, like a random Thursday or something and was like, can I get you dinner tonight? Like, it was just such a, I mean, people kind of use this phrase jokingly, like, I just feel so seen, you know, but I did feel seen. And I think that what that is, it's a picture of the God who sees, right? We see this in Genesis. He is the God who sees. And he doesn't just see, but he acts. And so having my friends sort of be a picture of that. And that was just really meaningful.
You reflect God's character when you do what God does, which is always know and always care. Doesn't mean you have to text every day, but yeah, I'm with you, especially the post-casserole. I will say our church has been pretty amazing on this. We actually have a ministry, like a department, as it were, called Caring Ministries, and they sent something right away, and then they've subsequently sent something. I don't know if they're on some, I haven't like mapped it out if it's like once a month or whatever, but little booklets, little gifts, little a phone call, and they're still coming. And we're at the past 6 month phase. So that's been, and even if it's like some of the booklets that have been sent might not be exactly what I need, but the fact that they're doing it's really lovely.
Yeah, it really is.
All right, I'm going to get feisty again.
Do it.
Don't use 99% of emojis. Listen, emojis have a place. This is not here. Now, there are a couple of exceptions. If you want to really try it out, a heart might work.
The broken heart, maybe.
Yeah, broken heart,
in
a
there.
Heart.
Yeah.
Maybe a teary face. I don't know. That's a stretch.
No.
Depends on the relationship.
Depends on how far out you are from it. Like the day that you text to tell your friends.
Yeah.
Don't respond with like tear emoji.
It's only funny now because if we don't laugh about it, we will cry about that.
Right.
Like,
or be mad.
We all got them.
Yeah.
And the non-emoji version of this that is like, oh, shoot. Like, shoot. Maybe just don't say anything. I know I said earlier, don't ever not say anything. Long day? Sorry.
I said, well, dang.
Oh, yeah.
But also long day,
But I did, I don't want to name this person lest she eventually watch this, but I did tell her, I was like, listen, I'm going to be kind of off. Because it was really soon after I went back to Houston. And she was like, shoot. Okay. I'm like, all right. So maybe an emoji would have been better than that, but you wanted to say something
I feel like an emoji back to her would have been appropriate.
This was live.
Well, that's when you just give her.
Text her.
No, I did. I have something to add to this.
Yeah.
Because, and I realize people call it different things, GIF or GIF. Do not send me a GIF.
Gifts are great.
With a T at the end are fabulous. Don't send me a GIF. This is not the time for a dancing teddy bear that's holding a heart.
I feel like no
and
time
says,
is
like,
a time
thinking
for that.
of you and Comic Sans. Like,
Comic Sans.
It feels like someone sent me a sticker from 7th grade. I can't.
KIT. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love you like a sis. It's just, you know what it is? And I'm going to use a term that I hate. It's tone deaf.
It is tone deaf. And it's also like, did you have so little time? This is like,
yes.
I mean, I'm on another rant here, but if you say something to someone and they send back TY for thank you, like you couldn't type out or talk to text to thank you. It's the sort of grief version of that. You know?
Right.
Like, thanks for I'm trying to think of ones that we got other than the dancing, but because we did get a dancing teddy bear.
Yeah, I got a couple dancing teddy bears. I might have gotten a cat or a bunny. It was some animal, something cute.
Hang in there.
I didn't get, I was like a cartoon animal of some sort.
Yeah.
And it was dancing. I mean, it was like rocking back and forth. It was, wow.
I don't even know where to go with that.
It was bad.
I want to go back to something we said earlier when we were talking about how sometimes the best thing to say is that you don't know what to say.
Mm-hmm.
There are different iterations of that. And there's sort of the opposite of some of the don'ts we've been talking about. For instance, I can't imagine is a good one because you can't. And I can't imagine your grief because everybody's different, right? I can't imagine. I mean, what we went through was really, really horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And the only people that could imagine what we went through were the people that were in that hospital room dealing with what we were dealing with, that knew Robert, that knew the story. So I can't imagine is a good one because it's honest.
Yeah, it is.
Just saying I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Because, yeah. Or tell me that your heart hurts or breaks along with mine. Mm-hmm. That one is, if you care about somebody, you can say that because you love them. Right? Like someone doesn't even need to have known my brother to have their heart hurt when mine hurts because they love me or they care about me. So those are sort of versions of I don't know what to say.
Yeah. I think too that's a good chance too for the person caring for the griever then to, you say, I can't imagine, or I'm so sorry, or whatever, and then one of us would respond and say, oh, thank you. But then it's almost like, what do we do now? Like, how does this conversation go? And I think it was always really helpful when the other person would say, from then they could say, well, do you want to talk about it some more? Or should we like go do this or whatever? Should we talk about that? And just give me permission. Because sometimes I did want to talk about it. And other times I was like, it's not, now's the church is about to start. No, or whatever. So just giving me kind of like help usher us out of the like that sort of awkward moment of like, I'm so sorry. Thank you.
So
blink,
beers?
Blink,
Yeah.
blink,
Blink.
So yeah, like help the one who's not grieving can help kind of usher out of that awkward moment of care into whatever's going to come next.
Life. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it might be interesting to talk just a little bit about some of the motivations behind these because I mean, we're giving a lot of do's and don'ts and they might not be the same as every grieving person. And even we don't always agree on this kind of stuff. But if the motivation behind saying something, texting something, extending some sort of platitude, whatever, is that you really care about the person, then it's probably good. If the motivation is, I want to do what I'm sort of culturally supposed to do, and I want to get out of it as quickly as possible because it makes me uncomfortable. Well, and I find this maybe more with like acquaintances where they're like, heard about your brother. Let me know if there's anything I can do, which is fine. That's fine. It's fine. I'll just keep saying fine.
It's fine.
It is, but it's like you haven't really opened the door to share with me in my grief, and not everybody has to, right? Like not every coworker has to share with me in my grief. But that motivation is really more the issue of all these do's and don'ts. I don't know if you have any thoughts about like why people do or don't do some of these things.
Yeah, I mean, my main one is a little cynical, but it is kind of what you were saying about. I think that a lot of people just are really, really uncomfortable with sitting in the presence of someone else's strong emotions. And it can be grief, it can be anger. I think we live in this society now where any kind of passionate emotion makes people feel
toxic.
it makes people feel really uncomfortable. They want to like squash it down and let's calm down here. Let's everybody like be nice.
Homeostasis.
Yeah. And when someone is in grief and there are feelings with grief that look, of course, like crying and sadness, but there are also feelings of grief where people are going to say things that sound really intense. They're going to maybe even question their faith. They're going to...
we haven't even knocked on that door.
Yeah. And that's so hard to sit with someone in that it's very easy to try to just do whatever you can, say whatever you can. That's like, pat. How can I put a Band-Aid on this and run out the door as fast as I can?
That's a good way to say it. I didn't have this one on the list, but you made me think of that with questioning your faith. I mean, our family, some of the people in our family are people of faith. We're Christians. I think if y'all listen to Theology on Air, you've pieced that together, at least about me. But this is the kind of thing that makes you ask the questions that everybody asks, right? Is God really good? Is there a point to this life? Is there a point to suffering? Why does God allow suffering? All those kind of things. And different people in different spaces of grief can sometimes walk away from God or feeling trust in God differently. I know for me, I didn't lose my faith, but I definitely didn't want to go to church. I didn't want to sing. People are like, oh, victory over death. I'm like, y'all miss me with that. I don't want to do that. Yeah. And that's an interesting space for people to help you grieve, because I did find there were a few people that got it. They're like, you come back when you're ready. Like, you don't need to do that. And you can, and here's the thing about God. He is so big and he is so in control. So in control. He's in control. You're not going to shake him by being shaken. Right. He's okay. He'll be okay. And so giving space for that too is really helpful. Yeah. I mean, God can absolutely handle our anger and our doubts and all of that. So it's not really the job of the person caring for the grieving one to like defend God or talk them back into faith. Right. Like, well, but I found this one book by so-and-so. If you just read it, I think then you'll see that you're like, no, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's maybe not the moment for like admonishment and that kind of thing. It's more of a moment of just like, let's just be free, and you can bring all of this before the Lord, and he can handle it. You're not going to hurt God's feelings.
Yeah. Because if anyone knows about suffering, it's God.
Right.
Yeah. So do you think that religious people, and I'm lumping all religious people together, are like better or worse at responding to grief? I didn't tell her I was going to ask this. I'm just thinking about it on the fly.
Well, I think it depends on the religious person, right?
Yeah.
And it depends on the relationship between the two people, the griever and the person caring. We need a name for this person. I keep saying the person caring. It's a little clumsy there.
The grief attendant. I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, I will say this. I think that religious people have a whole lot more in their arsenal that can turn annoying than people who aren't religious.
See, I thought you were going to say the nice thing, and I was ready to be like, no, they're the worst. I mean, I love my Christian friends, but what you just said is true.
It is true. I mean, we have these concepts, right, of like, for like concept of eternity, concept of justice, concepts of angels, all of these things where in a moment of discomfort, someone really wants to take all of those beautiful concepts, true concepts, and twist them to be something that will be comforting, twist them to be something that will like teach you what is true in this moment.
Yeah,
even if it's
they're
not
worried.
True.
She's going backslide.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, whereas, I mean, the people that I know who are not religious are, the worst thing they've said are like, my thoughts are with you, or
we didn't even talk about thoughts and like good energy, good
or vibes. Yeah. Sending good vibes your way.
Vibes.
And I mean, to the extent that, that's for that person, that is what, that's the most meaningful thing that they could say, about like maybe the time spent in thought or whatever.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the heart behind it.
I will say, I've had very dear people, both religious and non-religious, be my grief attendant.
Grief attendant.
Sounds like the lady in the restroom with the towel that wants you to give her $5 because she showed you where the paper towels were. Anyway, but there have been people on both sides that have been wonderful to me. Mm-hmm. But overall, the non-religious people did it better.
Wow.
Which is interesting. I think you said it well. There's a lot of things in your arsenal that can be just twisted, and it is out of a good desire, right?
It
It's
is.
Like, I don't want them to walk away from their faith because God is so good, and I want them to experience that. I don't want them to be hurting. I don't want. But I think, at least for me, my atheist, agnostic, skeptical friends are like, yeah, we get it. This world sucks, and now you're in that, and so we hate that for you, and we love you. And some of my atheist friends, the ones that like showed up, brought meals, sent cards, they cleaned my house. What? Y'all can still do that if you're watching this podcast and you live in Houston.
It's not too late. I had a religious friend who did this really well, though. 5 years ago, when I was going through something else that I won't get into, but it was just a lot of personal trauma and grief and loss that year. And one particular day when I got a phone call with just terrible news, and I kind of thought the phone call might be coming, so this friend had come over just in case. And I remember I just kind of collapsed in her arms, and she held me and she rocked me like a baby. And she said, "This is not okay." Mm-hmm. And she just said that over and over again. This is not okay. This is not
theology.
Okay. It is. And so many religious people, I think, want to say, it's okay. It's going to be okay. Everything happens for a reason, And she just was like, this is not the way the world was created to be. This is a sign of brokenness. This is not God's best for his world, and it's not what we were created to experience as part of God's best plan. So let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
It's not okay.
Yeah.
And I, ever since then, have just been, that's something that has stuck with me. It will always stick with me.
Yeah.
It's something I've used with other people. It's not okay.
Yeah. And that's really, we can probably kind of just, unless you have something else you wanted to add, we can close with this idea that, my sister and I are both Christians. And so part of the way that we have dealt with this grief and any grief that we've had, but this is the big one. This is in my life, the hardest thing is that it is broken, right? This is not the way the world is supposed to work. It's not the way that God intended things to work. Death is the result of people rebelling against God, and the whole world is messed up.
Yeah.
The earth is broken. We are broken. Relationships are broken. And the thing that makes me actually be a Christian is recognizing that it's broken, but also knowing that that's not the end of it. That there is hope. This is where I have a hard time understanding my non-believing friends, because I think, because you can acknowledge the first thing, like everyone that's alive in the world recognizes that things are broken, right? Like everybody knows that. That's not a mystery to anyone. Like, this isn't perfect. Weird. But Christians can say, we acknowledge that it's broken, but there's hope ahead. I mean, there's hope for now and there's hope for the future. And that can bring me some kind of, even in the midst of something like this, peace and joy. And that would be my, like, sort of the thing I would say, whether you're dealing with someone that's grieving or whether you're just listening to this because it's the next thing that came up on your podcast feed, is that, and you can say more about this, believing in a God who would experience the kind of suffering that Jesus did. Jesus lived a perfect life and deserved nothing. It was the only unjust death in all of history and will ever come is Jesus. He suffered and died, and he knows our sufferings. He knows the pain and sorrow that we will go through. But anyway, and of course, we believe he's going to make everything better one day. There'll be a day where all the tears are wiped away, where the earth is restored, where we're restored. And I am just so thankful that I can put my hope in that on my worst day.
Yeah. And the Father knows what it's like to watch someone suffer, someone that he loves deeply without all the mess of an imperfect and sinful heart. And if he can love Jesus with that perfect love, completely undiluted by sin, and then also watch him, the perfect Jesus, suffer, he certainly knows what we've been through. I've been really helped. There's this song by Andrew Peterson.
Oh yeah.
And
we listened to this and cried together.
Yeah. Do you feel the world is broken? And then a chorus of people responds, we do. Do you feel the shadows deepen? We do. And he goes on later, another verse later on says, does the Father really love us? He does. And in the end of the song, it says, does our God intend to dwell again with us? He does. And our hope is not in our brother living. Our hope is not in this pain and this grief somehow being erased. In fact, I don't want it to be erased. It's kind of a connection to him in a weird way. But our hope is that we have a God who transcends every bit of pain, every bit of sorrow, all suffering, including his own. He didn't just transcend it. He beat it.
Ooh, yes, he did.
He died. He was dead. He was like dead for 3 days.
The Apostles' Creed says it 3 times. Dead.
Yeah. And as my pastor says, he killed death dead. And he rose again. He defeated what looked like defeat. He defeated. He defeated Satan. He defeated death. And that God still sits on his throne.
That's right.
And he's going to live again with us. And so even as we suffer in this world, and we will probably suffer again, this world is really not our ultimate place of hope. It's not our ultimate place of joy. Our new home with Jesus in eternity is our place of hope, our source of hope. And if you're somebody who doesn't have that hope and doesn't have that, just that joy to undergird the suffering of this life, grief is going to be that much more devastating and that much more.
And that's saying something, because I feel devastated. Completely. And I know you do too.
Yeah. But we have that, and it's been my strength.
And I mean, not that we're going to altar call in the middle of a podcast or the end of a podcast, but if you're listening and you don't know what we're talking about, or you think we're crazy, but you want that, we want to tell you about it and explore that idea more. And both of us are willing to do that. This is my segue into, tell us where we can find you. But truly, if you don't know Jesus, we would like to introduce you to him and explore what that looks like and what a life could look like where suffering doesn't have the last and final say. Okay, so if people want to send you angry email because they don't like the things you said, or they're confused by all the do's and don'ts, or whatever, where can people find you?
Well, I am still living in the 2000s, so my email address is Yahoo.
Oh, she has a Yahoo account.
Okay.
Y'all
Let's
just
talk
find her
about
on
yours.
Facebook.
Let's
Shut
talk
up.
about yours. So it's just Laura_iCardi, ICARDI, like Cardi B, but with an I in front at yahoo.com. I'm very cool.
But is Cardi B cool?
I don't know anymore.
Find us on a future podcast and we'll talk about okay, but she's also just on Facebook and you can find her there. Yeah. And of course, you can find everything you need to know about Theology on Air and Theology on Tap at our website, HoustonTOT.com. That's HoustonTOT.com. And until we see you again or talk to you again, I encourage you, as always, to question freely, think deeply, and disagree as needed.